Hi everybody. So I just wanted to look at what went wrong in India, and I'm going to be looking at a few different issues that people have raised, and I'm going to start with the one that a lot of Indians have suggested, which is this Australian team is just not good enough. They're a bad team, India were just the better team. So I wanted to look at that. So first of all, we have the results, not counting this tour, in the previous 12 months, so in the reporting period. Australia had won 10 test matches, lost one and had 2 draws. So 91% of the completed matches resulted in a win to Australia. That is the highest of any team in the world. Now India had won, I believe they'd won 7, lost 4 and had 3 draws. So their percentage was around about 67% or 68%, or a lot less than the 91. So India were not the second best, they were about third or fourth. So they were up in there in contention for the World Test Championship final. But they weren't the number one. They're now the number one because they beat Australia twice. But they weren't before the series began. So if you're looking at that, you're saying, well, Australia were probably the better side. But then you say, well, Australia played at home a lot. So did India. So Australia played against some pretty good sides, but they were at home. So we've got that. All right, now let's look at the players. Second aspect of that. So looking at Australia's best opener, the 2 openers against India's best opener. So we're looking at Usman Khawaja versus Rohit Sharma. Now, they both have similar overall averages. Khawaja's a little bit higher, but in the last 12 months, Khawaja averages over 70, Rohit Sharma averages about 50. Pretty big difference. Yeah, sure, Rohit's doing okay. Khawaja's doing amazing. And yeah, pretty big gap. Then we look at the not so good opener. For Australia, that was David Warner. For India, that was KL Rahul. Now, they're both a bit out of form. Warner has the better overall record, but on form, he's in the last 12 months, KL Rahul's probably doing a little bit better. Not much better, they're both out of form, a little bit better. But overall, compared to the 2, Australia's doing a bit better. Now we look at number 3. Well, Marnus Labuschagne is the number 1 batsman in the world, averages 70 in the last year and 60 overall. Well, Virat Kohli is pretty good. He's no Marnus Labuschagne. So even at the peak of his powers, Virat Kohli was never doing as well as that. And right now he's a bit out of form. There's a massive gap between them right now. And, you know, Virat Kohli's average is below 50. So there's like a 20-run gap between them. Massive difference. Then we look at number 4, Steve Smith. And we're probably comparing him to Suresh Iyer. I probably would compare him with Suresh Iyer. Who was doing okay. He's probably averaging just over 50 lately, and that's about the same as Steve Smith is, but Steve Smith has been, well, his overall record's much better and he's ranked number 2, so there's a fairly big gap between them. Then we look at number 5, so normally that would be Travis Head for Australia, and for India, well, that might be Cheteshwar Pujara, and I suppose we could swap Pujara and Iyer around. Either way, you've either got Travis Head averaging 80 in the last year versus Pujara averaging about 30, or you've got that gap where Iyer's averaging about 55. Either way, enormous gap. So you're looking at the top 6. There's a massive favouritism to Australia. 5 out of 6 players Australia having edges, most of them by pretty big margins. Now we look at number 7. Now again, we're presuming that they're fully fit. Oh sorry, number 6 first. Cameron Green would be against Ravindra Jadeja. Now, Jadeja had been coming back from injury. Now, won 2 Man of the Match awards. Yeah, not counting the ointment. I'm going to remove the ointment for the equation. And we're not counting this series. Probably almost give it to Green. Green had been in really good form. He's finally started to come into it. So, look, it's hard to say, but Jadeja wasn't safely in the side. He was on the outskirts. So, yeah, I think Green was pretty safely in the side, so I'm going to give it to Green. Then we have Alex Carey versus Rishabh Pant. Look, I'd probably give it to Pant for his batting. So that's just definitely a second one for India. And then we have Pat Cummins versus Ravi Ashwin. Oh, well, that's pretty close. Cummins is the world's number 1 bowler. Before this series, Ashwin was number 5. Ashwin since replaced him, but again, I'm not counting the results of this series. Ashwin does bat a bit better, but Cummins is still probably quite a good batsman. I'd probably still give it to Cummins overall, but not by much. And then we've probably got Mitchell Starc versus Jasprit Bumrah. Now he's out injured, but would be normally India's best fast bowler. but that's not as good as Stark. I'd have to give it to Stark. Then we'd probably say Josh Hazlewood against maybe Mohammad Shami. Now, Hazlewood's out injured, but I'd probably give that to Hazlewood. Then you'd probably have Nathan Lyron against Axar Patel. Axar Patel's averaged 13 lately with a ball, also been getting a lot of runs. Have to give it to Axar Patel, probably by a pretty big margin. So we're really talking about maybe 8 out of 11 players for Australia that are ahead of players for India. And even if you say, okay, well, what about Ashwin? What about Jadeja? That maybe we can put them the other way. You've still got 6 out of 11. And I think the margin for the ones that are ahead for Australia is pretty big. So I'd probably say about a 30% advantage to Australia. So if we're playing on a neutral venue, or even just a fair venue, Australia are not only going to win, but absolutely decimate India. So if we had the two teams playing in England, for example, which I'm sorry, that doesn't play like Australia at all, but Australia would not annihilate them. Even if we played in Sri Lanka, which you'd say, oh, well, that's a spinning track, Australia would annihilate this team. It wouldn't be close. So the best 11 for Australia versus the best 11 for India, anywhere but India, Australia would win by miles. And India, with fair pitches, you'd still expect Australia to win most matches, and by pretty big margins. So it's not the team, it's not the results. So what is it then? First thing is Australia are missing 3 players, so is India. But arguably the 3 players, so Australia's 3 players are Cameron Green, Mitchell Starc and Josh Hazlewood. So India's 3 players were Suresh Iyer, who came in the second test, Rishabh Pant still out, and Jasprit Bumrah still out. Are they as big an issue? Well, probably not, because if you look at who's replaced them. Now for Australia, we have replaced Josh Hazlewood with Scott Boland. Good job. He's not that much worse. Probably about a 5% problem, 5% worse. And if we picked Aaron Hardie and we picked Joel Paris, there might not have been that much that we were losing. But the issue there is not so much that we're losing players, but that we didn't bother to replace them. Sure, we put Scott Boland in the squad, but where's Aaron Hardie? Where's Joel Paris? We didn't pick any players to replace those two. In fact, we picked completely different players. Was Lance Morris meant to replace Mitchell Starc? And they're completely different players. Sure, they're both fast, but different types of players. Lance Morris wouldn't work in India unless he has a lot of support. And in other words, with Cameron Green out, you can't consider Lance Morris. Because really fast bowlers in India only work if you have a lot of players to support them. And why did we replace Cameron Green with a spin bowler? A spin bowler that can't bat, can't bowl, just absolutely nowhere near test level. Ashwin Agar shouldn't have been in the squad, let alone replacing Cameron Green. And I can understand picking a different side sometimes. You look at the conditions and you say, well, I don't want to play them, I want to put them in. But they didn't even put him in the squad. So what we should have done with the squad, just 2 changes from what we had, take Ashwin Agar and Lance Morris out and put in Aaron Hardie and Joel Paris. Put them in, have the same number of players, put those 2 in. Morris has been nowhere near making any side, and Agar has been sent home now. So that's the first issue. We didn't cover the injuries. The second issue, so the injuries, and then we didn't cover them, but bigger issue, we didn't cover them. The next issue, second issue perhaps, is that when we did pick our sides, we picked the wrong sides. So why did Travis Head miss the first test? He did really well in the second. It was stupid for him to miss the first. He was in amazing form. He's averaging 85 in the last 12 months. Why is he out of the side? What the hell? So that was just stupid. And it was a choice between Peter Handscomb and Matthew Renshaw for who replaced Cameron Green, because we didn't pick the proper replacement. If we picked Aaron Hardie, we wouldn't have had that decision. But because of that, we not only missed out on having Aaron Hardie there for a like-for-like replacement, but we picked 2 players that we shouldn't have and also dropped Travis Head. So these issues compound. Similar situation with not picking a replacement for Mitchell Starc, we then went with a spinner. Yeah, Todd Murphy did well, good job. But, you know, that should have been a sort of stylistic choice saying, all right, well, do we pick Joel Paris or do we go with a spinner? We should have still had Joel Paris in the squad, even if he didn't play that test. Second test, what the hell were we doing picking 3 spinners? So what was Matthew Kuhnman doing? He was not test level. He doesn't even play for his state. He's second pick spinner for his state after Mitchell Swepson. What's he doing in Test cricket? And then he was over bowled. So we had Pat Cummins out by himself, the only fast bowler. What the hell? Should have had two fast bowlers. Should have picked Scott Boland. Why was Kuhnemann playing? And then we had Todd Murphy did a great first test and we just completely ruined it by barely bowling him in the second. What the hell? Sure, we ended up getting more runs than them. Not because of the bowling, not because of the bowling choices. Nathan Lyon bowled out of his skin, sure. But it was because of the batting. And then we let ourselves down, had a bit of a collapse. Now we can talk about that sweep shot, but that was working. You look at how we got our runs, how we got ahead, it was with sweeping. And sure, it fell apart and players should have put a bit of a better, made it harder to get out and should have tried to avoid the collapse. And I look at Steve Smith's dismissal and then Pat Cummins, and they were two of the really big bad ones. But ultimately it was also because of Travis Head. When Travis Head got out, everyone got out. And Travis Head was batting the best. So can you really blame him when he was getting all the runs and then he gets out in the way that was getting all the runs and then everybody else does it the same thing that he did that was working, but suddenly it's not working? I don't think it's fair to blame that for the loss. You might look at it and you say, oh, well, that's how everyone got out, that's the collapse. But then we look at the big one, the elephant in the room. India cheated in the first test. Now, I'm not saying India would have lost if they hadn't cheated, they probably would have won. They probably would have won by a similar margin to what they won the second test, about 6 wickets, maybe 8. But not by an innings in 126 runs or 132 runs or whatever it was. That was because they cheated. They doctored the pitch. And you might say, well, why did they cheat when they were going to win anyway? And I think it was more to show that they have the ICC in their back pocket. It was more to demoralise Australia, because the ICC should have gone in there and said, hey, what the heck is this pitch all about? It's only favouring right-handers. What the hell's this? Fix it. That's what they should have done. They should have said, fix it. They should have demanded them to fix it, or else abandoned the test and at least delayed the start until it was fixed, or else played a different ground. And they didn't do anything. Didn't even punish them after the match. Did absolutely nothing. Did no review, nothing. And that is disgraceful. And then we had Ravindra Jadeja. Rure, he lost 25% of his match fee for bringing an ointment onto the field that actually cost wickets, at least 2 wickets. Labuschagne and Renshaw were both out because of that. It was quite blatant, and we lost at least 2 wickets due to the pitch doctoring too. Nothing happened. So we have had other teams get in trouble for theoretical things that don't change the result, don't cause any wickets, don't make any difference at all, but could have. And this is actually making a difference? Nothing's happening? I'm sorry, no. What I think we should do moving forward is refuse to play in India. I'm going to say, look, once this test series is over, we need to just sit back and say, right, we're not going to plan any more series in India until the ICC steps in and stops India from cheating. And that means no more pitch doctoring, no more any of that. Now, if we get punished, so be it. We get punished. We don't go in the World Test Championships, so be it. And we should encourage other teams to do the same thing. Refuse to play in India until they stop cheating. And we really need to put pressure on the ICC to ban India entirely until they stop cheating. Once they stop cheating, we can let them in again. But cricket isn't just for India. We don't need to bow down to India. And if they're going to cheat like this and win series and get into World Test Championships finals because of cheating, that's not what cricket is about. And that's the ultimate reason why we're doing as badly as we are in India. India are cheaters and they need to stop being cheaters. That's it from me. Bye-bye now.